Good morning on this Thursday, April the 1st. It is April 1. Imagine that. Let it be known, she is the first U.S. Park Police, the first Black woman U.S. Park Police chief in the 230-year history of that agency. Her name is Pamela Smith, and she will join us this morning. Also, we're expecting that very shortly our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis, to join us. But first, let's tackle the headlines. An employee at the Minnesota corner store who suspected George Floyd gave him a counterfeit $20 bill last May testified in court on the third day of the trial of former officer Derek Chauvin. And he said he felt disbelief and guilt, knowing that their interaction led to Floyd's death under police or on the former officer Chauvin's knee. He says, if I would have just not taken the bill, this could have been avoided. That was Christopher Martin, the employee at the corner store. The 19-year-old was so distraught on that witness stand. Also distraught reporting by the Minneapolis Spokesman Recorder, our sister newspaper out in Minneapolis. They revealed that in a video played 61 seconds, 61-year-old Charles McMillan courageously walked over to Chauvin, a man who had just killed another man in broad daylight, and asked him why. Before we go any further with that, though, let's bring on Dr. Ben Chavis, our president and CEO. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
I'm at the NMPA office this morning early, doing some taping. I'm glad to be on Let It Be Known. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, thank you for going over the headlines. And we thank our newspapers in Minneapolis for sending you those feeds directly from the trial of Chauvin.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Charles McMillan, the 61-year-old who testified, he said that Chauvin told him, and it was caught on tape, I had to control George Floyd because he's a sizable guy. He looked like he was probably on something. But Charles McMillan told Chauvin, he says, I don't respect what you did. And then Chauvin said, that's just one man's opinion. Well, it turns out it's the opinion shared by tens of millions of people. The older Black man told the jury that he now saw Chauvin as a, quote, maggot. The prosecution submitted into evidence body cam footage from the officers that was played back to back. And throughout the footage, George Floyd appeared paranoid and afraid of the police. The body cam video revealed that one of the first cops on the scene pulled a gun and pointed it at George Floyd while he was sitting in a car. The police pulled the pistol on a man for trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. Not only can the police be seen detaining him for a minor offense, but with absolutely no evidence at all, the cop says he was being arrested for forgery. Now, keep in mind, possession of counterfeit money is not the same as being the creator of counterfeit money. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is leading that prosecution, and we will continue to bring you updates from the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder and Insight News out in Minneapolis. Dr. Chavis, we see this case unfolding more and more. We're seeing how despicable this really was.
Absolutely. I had a long talk with Mel Reeves, the publisher of the Minnesota Spokesman, yesterday, and they're all on it. They actually have a press room right next door to the courtroom, so they're able to keep up with all of the details live on behalf of the Black press of America.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, the Washington Informer is reporting in today's edition that D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton has announced that the House Committee on Oversight and Reform will mark up and vote on her D.C. statehood bill at 10 a.m. on April the 14th. This historic markup of the D.C. statehood bill, which will be only the second in Congress since 1993, will prepare the bill for the floor and will serve to educate the American public on why statehood for the residents of our nation's capital is so important. Eleanor Holmes Norton said that as we held the hearing on the bill last week, we learned that support for D.C. statehood in the latest polls has increased to 54% nationally. So they are moving forward with this statehood bill, Dr. Chavis, but it's all the more important as President Biden and leading Senate Democrats contemplate the fate of the filibuster.
Absolutely. And we salute Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton for her leadership. And remember, Stacey, she's been a strong advocate of the Black press of America. She's the one that also introduced the legislation to make sure that Black-owned newspapers and other Black-owned media companies get advertising share a fair percentage of the national budget for federal advertising, which is over $1 billion. So I think that Eleanor Holmes Norton, I want her to know that the Black press around the United States, we will support the statehood initiative. We will support the DC statehood legislation. And I think this would give 2 more senators and help break down this logjam in Congress. We need more votes on the Senate. We need to maintain more votes in the House so we can get all the legislation to improve the quality of life of all Americans, but particularly for Black Americans going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to say good morning to some of our viewers, our longtime viewers, Michelle Madison, Lynn Spivey, Annette Phillips, of course, our own Bobby Henry down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Tom Costu. Good morning, Tom. Good to see you. Joni King and all others who are watching this morning. In other news, Dr. Chavis, some of the nation's most prominent Black business leaders are calling out their Fortune 500 peers for their muted response to new laws that restrict voting across the country. Merck Chief Executive Ken Frazier and Berkshire Hathaway Director Kenneth Chenault were among the 72 Black executives who signed a letter released Wednesday challenging other corporate leaders to be more forceful in condemning what both said were deliberate attempts by Republicans to limit the number of Black Americans casting ballots in key states. Chenault said that many people died for the right of Black people being able to vote. What we are calling on corporations to do is not just say they believe strongly in the right to vote, is to publicly and directly oppose any discriminatory legislation and all measures designed to limit any individual's ability to vote. The letter recounts the history of efforts to restrict African Americans' voting rights during and prior to the civil rights movement, and it calls on the larger business community to use its influence to stop efforts to limit voting.
Absolutely. We should do a feature on these corporate leaders, Stacey, that has signed this document. It's very important. I reminded what John Lewis told us before he passed. He says we should continue to make good trouble. And this is good trouble on behalf of voting rights. We need to make sure that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which restores the voting rights of all Americans, but particularly for Black Americans, that's also before Congress. So there's a lot happening, and we got to make sure that we stay on it, that we keep our readers, our viewers well informed about all these legislative initiatives that are now current. And we thank the Biden-Harris administration, Stacey, for keeping their promise. That infrastructure bill that President Biden introduced is going to be far-reaching and really help not only the bridges and highways and ports of America, but it's designated to help our communities bridge this economic gap that's been widening, certainly under the Trump administration. Now, the Biden-Harris administration will attempt to build this bridge of economic development for African Americans and for other people of color communities.
Yeah, and that bill, we have some feedback. I'm sorry about that. But the bill, I'm sorry, the Black business leaders move comes after and along with, I should say, the discussions in Major League Baseball to move the All-Star games scheduled for Atlanta this summer away from Georgia. That would cost about $200 million to the local economy because of this bill. It's not the first time that the sports leagues have done this. We know in 2017, the NBA moved its All-Star game from North Carolina because of what they said was a oppressive bill that lawmakers there passed. Good morning to Tiske Bazil. Thanks for watching. Dr. Chavis, so we also see that there's being more pressure now on the PGA too to move its Masters from Augusta coming this spring as well. So a lot of things happening. We know that the one person who's been leading these voting rights efforts, especially from Georgia, is Stacey Abrams.
Absolutely. Sister Stacey Abrams is an outstanding African American woman leader. She's an outstanding lawyer. I know her very well, legislature. She really should be the governor of Georgia. She lost on it by a narrow, and I hope she runs again because if we can, you see the importance of these elections have consequences. Right now, we have a bad governor, a terrible governor in Georgia, and he signed that awful legislation. And then you saw, Stacey, they arrested a black woman member of the Georgia legislature simply because she knocked on the governor's door. And look what happened on January the 6th when white supremacists stormed the U.S. Capitol versus our sister leader in Georgia just knocking on the governor's door. And they put her in handcuffs and led her away like she was a common criminal.
Yeah, there were several police officers on the scene for that. And you're right, when you consider what happened at the Capitol, some things you just have to shake your head, Dr. Chavis. Here's another an interesting story, I guess, a good story for this young man. 27-year-old Francisco Lindor of the New York Mets signed a mega contract this morning. 10 years, $341 million. It is the third richest contract in sports history. The shortstop is considered one of the best players in all of baseball, and he had a deadline of opening day, which is today, for the Mets to get the deal done, and they used the 11th hour, as it were, to get the deal done. Francisco Lindor will make approximately $34 million a year for the next 10 years. So we see, Dr. Chavis, that the sports world is doing pretty well, even in the pandemic.
Absolutely, particularly for Blacks and Latinos. And I think that we should continue to push all the major baseball, basketball, football, hockey, golf, all of the major sports industries not only should continue to practice diversity and inclusion, but also make room for ownership. I think the economic impact of major league sports is very significant. And of course, we play the game. We are the persons on the field and on the court. But we need more ownership. We need more economic development going back to the Black community. And of course, the Black press, a number of our African American newspapers have not only sport pages, but we follow the sports news as well as the entertainment news, all of the cultural impact. That's why you have the Black press of America.
Yeah, and it was almost a year ago that another young African American athlete, the Los Angeles Dodgers superstar outfielder Mookie Betts, signed a 12-year, $365 million deal after being traded from the Boston Red Sox to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the sports world, again, is doing well. But the sports world, Dr. Chavis, as James Wright says, sports ownership is the key. The sports world seems to be recognizing their African American and Latino players much more now than they have at any time, really, Dr. Chavis.
Some of the salaries that you see our African American Latino players get, which they deserve, but there's a direct correlation between what they do in the sports industry to the cause of social justice. You can also say that over the last 12 months, over the last couple of years, the social consciousness of our major sports league players has really risen, and they're outspoken on Black Lives Matter. They're outspoken on voting rights. They're outspoken on getting education for our young people. They're outspoken on making healthcare affordable to all of our people. So yes, what Martin Luther King said was so true, that the extent to which we engage in racial justice, we engage in social justice, we engage in economic justice, the newest benefit for everyone in our community. They say it takes a village to raise the child, but it takes social consciousness to raise the village.
Of course, well said, Dr. Chavis. Good morning to Alice and Linda as well. Well, 230 years in existence. The U.S. Park Police have been around, and you rarely hear a lot about them. Everyone else gets all the glory, as it were. But in 230 years, the Park Police has never had a Black woman lead them. Well, that has all changed, and we want to welcome this morning the Chief of the U.S. Park Police, Miss Pamela A. Smith. Good morning, Chief Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Brown. How are you today?
Doing good. Good to see you. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule to talk to the Black press and let it be known she's right here with us. Chief Smith, congratulations. Tell us a little bit about you and how this came about. The first Black woman to lead this this force.
Well, that's that's a very good question, Mr. Brown and Dr. Chavis. How are you this morning? It's how it came about. I'm going to assume it started over 23 years ago when I sat in a seat at the Academy at the Federal Law Enforcement Center as the only female in my class of 24 classmates. And I had a desire when I moved to Staten Island, New York, right after college, to become a U.S. Park Police officer. In my formative years in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, I did not have the opportunity to feel or embrace the profession, the noble profession of law enforcement. But when I moved to Staten Island, New York, I met a young man who was a horse-mounted patrol officer for the United States Park Police, and I was very impressed with his rapport, his conversation. And I took a moment at that time to realize that law enforcement officers are human, unlike what I had experienced as a young child growing up in Pine Bluff. So I immediately took on that role to pursue a career in law enforcement, and the U.S. Park Police kind of picked me up, if that even makes sense. And it's been history since then. 23 years later now, I sit in this role, and it's very humbling to be in this position. I realize and recognize that the culture of law enforcement has changed, but it's certainly my hope that with being in this position, I have the opportunity to make some really positive changes for our men and women who are interested in law enforcement.
Yeah, and we alert our viewers that we are having some audio issues here. We apologize for that. We hope to have it cleared up, but we are so pleased to have Chief Smith with us. Chief, can you also talk about the force itself? A lot of people just think when they think about Park Police, they don't really understand the vast responsibilities you have. Can you fill us in a little bit on that?
Well, my responsibilities are very, very vast. Can you hear me okay now? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
The duties and responsibilities of the Chief of Police of the U.S. Park Police kind of extends in most of the urban areas of the U.S. Park Police. We are assigned in the Washington, D.C. area, where we have responsibility of the monumental corps, which is primarily the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson. And I feel very proud to have the Dr. Martin Luther King Memorial also as part of our icons and memorials. We also have responsibility in the New York City area, where we are stationed in Staten Island, New York, Brooklyn, New York, as well as the Lower Manhattan area. And one of our primary responsibilities in the New York City area is the Statue of Liberty and the Ellis Island National Immigration Museum. And one of the other areas that I just visited on last week and returned on Monday was the San Francisco field office, where we are stationed on the Presidio and the Golden Gate National Recreation Area in the San Francisco area.
Wow. So it does stretch a long way. Dr. Chavis, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Thank you. First, I want to also congratulate Chief Smith. We're so proud of your journey, your success, and now your outstanding leadership of our nation's United States Park Police. A side note, back in 1995, Chief Smith, I was the national director or helped to organize the Million Man March. I spent a lot of time with the Park Police going over all of the details of planning a very successful Million Man March. And look at it now, 2021, you are the chief of the United States Park Police. We're so proud of you.
I thank you so very much for that. Those accolades, it has certainly been very humbling to sit in this seat. I have worked alongside many law enforcement officers that are assigned here. But not only have I worked alongside the majority of them, but a lot of them I've trained as entry-level police officers while I was assigned at federal law enforcement training. So I take this very personally. I take this responsibility very personally, but I do not take it lightly. I understand that there is a lot going on in the world today as it relates to law enforcement, and I am certainly up for the challenge.
Absolutely. And you know, there are many who look like you, who are looking up to you. What advice would you give young African American women? I mean, just your presence has, I'm sure, encouraged so many. But what more encouragement can you give African American women?
That's a really good question, because I think about the lack of encouragement that I had coming up, and I just want to say, follow your heart, follow your dreams. You never give up. I am one who comes from a faith-based background, and I've said this before. One of my favorite passages of scripture is Philippians 4:13. It simply says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I would encourage you to hold on to your strength and be encouraged. It does not matter what it looks like in front of you. It doesn't matter what it looks like behind you or beside you. But if you stay the course and stay focused on the things and the goals and the tasks and the assignments that are ahead of you, you can be all that you can be. More importantly, you can become what other folks thought you could not become. And so I just sit here today, really embracing the moment that we have to bring women in law enforcement. And I hope that not just my appearance, but my professional law enforcement is not overlooked by women. We have some amazing women here within our organization today, and I am very proud of every young woman that has decided to take on the role and responsibility of becoming a career law enforcement officer. So thank you for this amazing opportunity to sit there for you and do my best I can to encourage women. This is a noble profession, despite what you see. I've spent 23 years here, and I would not have had it any other way.
Well, Chief, thank you so much. We hope that as in the future, sometime in the not too distant future, we can have you back. We've had so much problems with the audio this morning, but we certainly appreciate you coming on this morning. And Dr. Chambers, I'm going to give you a closing thought before we wrap.
I just want to also thank Chief Smith, and I just got a text from the head of public broadcast and television. Chief Smith, we're going to be contacting you because we also want to. Your message is so vital, so important, and so really inspiring to millions of other African American women, Latino, all the people of color. Really salute your ascendancy to this very important key law enforcement position. At a time in our country when there is debate about law enforcement, you certainly bring not only value to law enforcement, but value to what it means to have diversity and inclusion at the highest level of law enforcement in America. God bless you. Thank you. On behalf of the Black Press, Chief Smith, we salute you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, because of the audio problem, unfortunately, we've had kind of cut it a little short this morning. We having so much difficulties, but we assure you that we will have the chief back. We will assure you that it'll be a lot better tomorrow. Our closing thoughts this morning: April represents, throughout the month, it represents several different observances, including Child Abuse Prevention Month. So today we observe National Child Abuse Prevention Month, which each year there's an opportunity to learn about the signs of child abuse and how to prevent it. Communities around the nation usually come together to support families and children by reinforcing strategies that are working. Outreach programs, resources, and activities offer tools for identifying abuse and neglect. With each opportunity, we want to bring hope to families and come closer to an end for child abuse and neglect. For more information on National Child Abuse Prevention Month, visit www.childwelfare.gov. Promote the prevention of child abuse by using the hashtag National Child Abuse Prevention Month on social media. always remember the children. Let it be known there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. We will see you tomorrow.